Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We bring you greetings from Richmond Media Health Issues to your doorsteps. Beloved, it's indeed another brightest day that the good Lord has given to us. And we want to apologize for you waiting for us for more time. And we know God's time is the best, and God always knows the best. And we thank God for making today's program to come on because He has a purpose for that. We want to assure you that you will never regret at the end of today's lesson, and it's very, very important. Beloved, today is another special day that we are bringing health to your doorsteps with a very interesting and important topic. The topic we will be discussing, we are going to talk about spiritual health of our children. Whenever we are talking about health, wherever we go, we mostly talk hypertension, the lifestyle conditions, but we neglect certain aspects. But when you are defining health, it tells you that it's a complete state of where physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health is also part. But today we want to link it to our children, how we can be able to bring them on board spiritually to be able to maintain this spiritual health. And that is what Richmond Media Health Issues we want to bring to your doorsteps. Today with me, we have a very important and special guest that God will be using to bless us today. And without wasting much time, we will introduce our sister Lionel to the public. So, sister, you are welcome to Richmond Media Health Issues. Hello. You are welcome to Richmond Media Health Issues.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Just want to thank you for, can you hear me? Just want to make sure everyone's hearing me.
Yeah.
Happy Sunday to everyone. Happy Sunday to everyone. Very good. Yeah. So this evening, we are looking at, as my colleague said, a very important topic around spiritual health and our children. We all have been children at some point, and I want to suggest that we are all humans and we all have 5 senses, irrespective of age, race, culture, or creed. And the topic is one in which I'd like to just unpack it slowly by looking at what is spiritual health and what are the factors affecting children's spiritual health. And then we'll then explore some strategies to improve and or to maintain children's spiritual health. So this presentation is for everybody, for an organization, for the health sector, for communities, for families, for people who are thinking about having children, for people who are thinking about working with children. And it's also meant to provoke the academia world around nursing and care with regards to children, and not just children, but those who work within the field, such as social workers and others who are employed and deployed in empowering our young people to become more effective in the holistic sense. So to our listeners out there, just want to give a shout out to everyone who has tuned in. What is your understanding of spiritual health? If there's a way of communicating that, do call in, do leave a message, do leave something in the chat. If you're on Facebook, then do leave some thoughts there. So what is spiritual health? Now, whilst you're doing that, I also want to suggest that the challenge that we are facing with in this current climate, in understanding some of the studies in terms of the qualitative studies and the quantitative studies around spiritual health. The field around spirituality and spiritual health is rooted in a range of interpretations as well as interpretations. And I'm not here to challenge the academias. I'm just here to present simply my understanding with a bit of research around the topic. And so for today, I would like us to think about what it is that makes up spiritual health. The word spiritual has a lot of meanings. Some people may argue that they're not spiritual. They go to church, but they're not spiritual. Some people may argue that they are not religious, but they are spiritual. Some people may argue they're neither spiritual nor religious. Some people who do care in the health industry are neither healthy, in terms of how they would perceive holistic health, or may not be in their own understanding to be religious, yet they are caring for people who may deem that they have spiritual health and they want to be spiritually healthy. So we have this dichotomy of understanding, and that's why for me today I just want to unpack that slowly so we can best understand where I'm coming from in the context of spiritual health. And the word spirituality also derives from that Latin word spiritus, which refers to the breath of wind and the spirit which gives life to persons. And from the biblical perspective, it talks about God breathing into man and they becoming a living being. And some people consider that breath to be a spirit. People have different interpretations. And so for me, it signifies whatever is at the center of all aspects of a personal life. Spiritual health is at the root cause of who you are. And I want to suggest also that Florence Nightingale, for those who do history, may remember her being a nurse. She also believed that spiritual health and was part of well-being, and part of her thrust to want to help was because she felt that it provided the energy that was required to promote a healthy and holistic environment to nurture and to care for the sick. So rooted in that thinking, then, I will be unpacking what is spiritual health. Now, the concept of spiritual health also has to do with, and it has been described in two dimensions, both the vertical dimension, which supports a transcendent relationship between a person and God, and also the horizontal dimension, which describes the positive relationships between us as human beings and neighbors, and the whole aspect has been explored by, I would say, I'm referring to Gray and Smith in their research in 2006, and spiritual well-being, as they have chosen to call it, has a positive impact and effect on health. Now, for those who may experience spiritual well-being, I want to suggest that those connectiveness and those need to connect, we then sometimes find it important in terms of our spiritual well-being being part of spiritual health. So spiritual health, therefore, if we were to consider a word cloud, there are words that may pop up such as experience, life, spiritual, well-being, personal, teaching, belief. All sorts would perhaps pop up. And if I was to challenge you to, use some of these words that I've called and choose at least two words from the word cloud that I'm trying to create in your mind, you yourself may be able to come up with your own definitions, and I'd welcome those definitions, certainly on Facebook or through YouTube. And so please put it in the chat if you can, of what spiritual health actually means to you. For me, I would say spiritual health is vague and it's complex, and it can be differently perceived in different cultures and different settings, and it can be influenced by social, cultural, political, technological and a variety of measures or structures in terms of religious and theoretical structures and literature. So the vagueness of spiritual health is what sometimes creates a challenge in understanding how to address any issues that comes from spiritual health. And so I want to suggest that spiritual health, because of its vagueness, Bensley in 1991, in his research, et al., looked at all of these aspects, and the challenge it presents makes it difficult to the point that culturally, some people deem children to be seen and not heard. So therefore, a child may not have a voice or express spiritual health in a way that can be understood by adults who are now grown. And so spiritual health or health sometimes is being managed by parents, by adults, by caregiver in a way that negates or neglects the need for a child to express and enjoy spiritual health. So here we are discussing spiritual health today. So the concept of spiritual health also makes it even more complex because of the child being a person, the child having the connectedness with their parents or their caregiver, or living with a foster parent, or the transience of how they perceive spiritual health, and that whole piece in terms of faith and hope and inner strength and peace, those variety of concepts that describes spiritual health can add meaning, but at the same time, it needs to be contained in a way that we could provide meaningful interpretation to support spiritual care to our children when we talk about spiritual health. So it is important to understand the concepts as outlined in terms of my descriptive, in terms of what that means for spiritual well-being. So moving on first, a definition has been proposed by O'Brien in 1982 to suggest it is a state of well-being and an equilibrium in that part of a person's existence. And he relates this to the ultimate good. Another Young suggests in 1984, his definition goes like this: the interrelatedness of body, mind, and spirit within the context of inner peace and in terms of relationships with others and with nature. We find, therefore, in literature a variety of thinking here. And as a result of that, it's left us to start to think about how we connect with some of these interpretations. For example, Chapman in 1986 advanced that the ability to develop our spiritual nature of its fullest potential, to its fullest potential, to include things like discovering and articulating our basic purpose in life, and learning how to experience love and joy and peace and fulfillment of self, and how to help ourselves and others achieve their full potential. That's one that has been adapted by many. We have Chapman in 1987 saying our ability to discover and articulate, which I've just said earlier. The key bit I'm trying to pull from here is learning how to give and receive love, joy, and peace, to pursue a fulfilling life, and to contribute to improvement of our spiritual health and that of others. So there are some tenets here that are very salient to understanding what true spiritual health is, and I say true spiritual health. Another advance from Hawkes, it says a high level of faith, hope, and commitment in relation to a well-defined worldview Now our worldview now takes on systems thinking, soft systems thinking that has been developed by Checkland. So here we have now soft systems coming into this definition, where there's a sense of meaning and purpose of existence in general and that of others, and the ethical path of that personal fulfillment. Then the last definition that I'm sharing from literature is around Fisher's thinking on spiritual health, which is the fundamental dimension of a person's overall health and well-being, permeating and integrating all the other dimensions of health. So the physical, the mental, the emotional, the social, the financial, the vocational, the educational, all aspects. So he's addressing the holistic aspects of the human being. So if you think with me now, would you agree spiritual health is A, achieved when you feel at peace with life? B, simply put, it is finding hope and comfort in even the hardest of times? Or C, does spiritual health mean and support your life experiences, which is complex? And also D, do you agree spiritual health includes or is part of spirituality, where it's being experienced differently by everyone? I want to suggest that spiritual health is a mixture of all four. You may or may not agree, and if you don't, let's hear why you agree. Let's understand and unpack why you would disagree or agree. To our audience, I want to suggest to you that a child's spirituality depends on a balance of physical, psychological, sociological, cultural, development, and spiritual factors, where spiritual health becomes important in helping that individual develop as a whole person. And as a result of that, it allows the child to integrate meaning in their lives. It allows the child to have a sense of purpose. It allows the child to have connectivity to their world and something larger than themselves, whether to their community or their personal calling or a form of divinity. I want to suggest that spiritual health is important, and the spiritual health and how it impacts on our children has a variety of factors that are driving it. Why am I saying so? It's because the word spiritual health means different things to different people, as I've already alluded to in my presentation. I also want to suggest that when we are thinking about the factors that are affecting spiritual health, we may, from a Christian perspective, those who are within Christendom, or whether you may be a Muslim, or whether you may be just an individual who's existing, not being sure if there's a God or not. Doesn't matter. The point that what matters is that there are factors that affect your health, and the same factors that can affect your health and your well-being can affect a child, because before an adult or an individual who is a teen or someone who's growing older is affected, I want to suggest at some point there was growth, there was birth, there was growth, there was development. And within that growth and development, there are factors that will contribute to growth, effective development. And so it is with spiritual health. I want to suggest that when we look at some of the core values around Christendom, for example, because of the word spiritual health, we may then come up with terms that are quite biblical. And, when we think about some of these biblical context. We may value, for example, the written word and say it is the highest authority to which governs our spiritual health. We may come up with the fact that we need to honor Jesus Christ as our friend, as a savior, or as a high priest, as a soon-coming king. We may want to allude to the fact that we mean to operate by faith and not by sight and not by works, lest any man should boast. We may cry out with the call of Elijah for our parents to turn their hearts back to their children and their children to their parents. We may turn to our parents, to the God-given role that they have been given to discipline their children. Or we may call on all children and teens and adults to receive the Holy Spirit and to partner Christ in making disciples, whichever way you may choose to operate. I want to suggest that as individuals, as caregivers, there are real issues that sometimes we face. And some of the factors that impact maybe our time, lack of verbal encouragement, poor parenting skills. So whilst we are all learning and we're all growing, the fast pace that we are being put through in terms of our current life now, sometimes parents are struggling to create boundaries or even be caregivers to their own children. So they pay people to be caregivers, or they may, out of frustration, give up their children, and for whatever reason, they may end up in a social care setting where ignorance, along with lack of understanding or false cultural beliefs or traditions, then usurp the understanding around spiritual health. And as a result, then, may lead to neglecting the core of the child who may require spiritual health to thrive and become the authentic self. I want to suggest that part and parcel of that may then lead to organizational barriers, because individuals who may not have had an exposure to spiritual health or accept it as important in their lives may be decision makers in organizations. And as a result of being decision makers in organizations, then they, with their biases, they with their prejudices, they with their theoretical understanding may, in building the logistics of organizations or contracting their buildings for use to educate, may do so not understanding how that building construction may impact on that child's spiritual health. And I may say, because there may not be any sunlight, the air that's being used in the building may not be as healthy, or it may be that they may have a lack of robust safeguarding processes, so that impacts on health and safety of the child or the caregiver within that setting, or there may be no accountability within the culture of that organization. Maybe a lack of organizational awareness, poor governance, planning, not being clear around the definitions around what spiritual health looks like, not even having a conversation, perhaps. Raising awareness, such as this program, may be one that would have benefited such an individual, and that may also improve or help those who may lack professional collaboration around the subject when we're looking at the child being the center of all of this. So what I'm trying to say here is there's a variety of factors that can lean into impacting what true spiritual health should be, and the terminologies and the concepts around that also require clarification, so that there can be understanding in the concept of spiritual health in terms of its usage around religion versus spiritual well-being, as well as the child's whole self-development. So those differences in academia and research and views and narratives and in cultures can all then sort of bring about a cloudiness as to understanding what true spiritual health is about. I want to suggest that there are also factors to which, if we were to look at the political climate and we look at things like the economical climate, there's an analysis that one can use when they're examining external factors. We call it the pestle analysis. And when we look at those external pressures, such as economics, such as political, such as the social impacts, such as the technological impacts, children are on phones 24/7 now, using it. It's affecting their eyes, it's affecting how they relate, it's affecting how they relate socially, it's even causing biases in how they may relate. They may not go outside to appreciate nature because they're always on their phone. The way they relate to one another, they may not have social skills. These all impact on a child's spiritual health. And I want to suggest also the legal factors within our society can impact on a child's spiritual health. Why am I saying that? When we had COVID, there was a point by which there was a lockdown, and there were not many who had the latitude to relate socially. And so many children, they were on their phones. Many children lacked going outside. They lacked understanding what the outdoor looked like, felt like. If they were living in a high-rise building which has over 25 floors, going outside is a no-no during COVID lockdown. So these challenges with children who may be living in war-torn lands, we have people in Palestine, there are fights, the wars, rumors of wars are happening. What I'm trying to suggest, even in families, they have fights and they get abused. And for whatever reason, this does impact on our children. And I want to suggest it also impacts on the core of that child's spiritual health and well-being. So what I'm also saying here is when we slowly start to unpack spiritual health in some of the real things that happen in our lives, sometimes there may be sudden death, sometimes there may be acute illnesses, chronic illnesses, terminal illnesses, even COVID. It brought about a variety of sudden deaths in our families. And so sometimes we have to expect the unexpected. A child who has been taught or nurtured in having healthy spiritual health, that child who has been taught to appreciate that death is a natural process of life, or an adult who may have lacked that learning early and understanding, it can acutely affect them in some way, shape, or form. What am I trying to say? Allow me to just use a point here. For example, those who are spiritually healthy, they may experience joy, they may experience the ability to forgive themselves and others and accept hardship and the mortality report as advanced by research in terms of Gales et al. Suggests that they actually have and live an enhanced quality of life. They're at peace and have a positive sense of who they are and their sense of purpose. And they also physically and emotionally demonstrate very strong personas. I want to suggest, therefore, that spiritual health has a real foothold. And the studies in this area is now growing around spiritual health. And I want to suggest that people do gain spiritual health by finding a balance between their values, goals, and beliefs, and their relationship within themselves and with others. So that connectivity does come through. What I'm trying to suggest here is that throughout a life, that a person often grows more spiritual and becoming increasingly aware. I would want to say aware of the meaning and the purpose and the values of their life. And in times of stress, in times of illness, in times of loss, in times of recovery, a person oftentimes who've been taught and appreciate spiritual health, they can use their previous ways of learning to respond and to adjust to these situations. I want to suggest that oftentimes these coping capabilities and styles within a person who has strong spiritual health, they oftentimes have strong spiritual beliefs. I want to advance that spiritual beliefs changes even the way patients grow and develop. I want to suggest that spiritual health in children, when taught early about themselves and their relationships with others, I want to suggest, according to Muslin in 2010, when he did a research, he said nurses who understand a child's spiritual belief are able to care and support that child and to give the child the comfort that they need within the context of that child's Christian belief. I am suggesting today that children who are mature and matured into adulthood as they grow with spiritual health, they can experience spiritual growth by entering into a lifelong relationship of understanding who they are and their self-esteem and their self-purpose would be more defined. I want to suggest an ability to care for their spiritual health and that of others becomes more meaningful as they volunteer their time and give of themselves to others so that they can impact lives and, using a strapline from Dagenham Eagles, transform lives and transform communities. So I want to suggest that the factors influencing spiritual health are real. When illness, loss or grief or any major life changes occurs, a child who grows with and can relate to spiritual health, they can be a positive life changer in this current world. I'm not sure how much time I've got. I'm going to check in with my host because I want to step into a very sensitive side of spiritual health, if you can still hear me. And I'll be looking at one or two examples just to illustrate what I'm trying to say. So, Mr. Host, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, loud and clear, loud and clear. And you know what? Our viewers and our listeners are happy for this lesson because this is one
Wow.
of the neglected areas that we think about whenever we are talking about health. We
Yes.
mostly goes with the adults, the aged. We
Yes.
neglect the children, especially with an aspect or the aspect of spirituality. And we thank
Yes.
you for bringing this out for us to know the barriers and the factors that can affect the spiritual health of our children. So God bless you. So Sister Josephine said, God bless you. Great lesson. Good job. Then Sister
Okay.
Harry also is greeting us.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so someone was asking, "Hey, how things are going? At what point can someone initiate spiritual health to a child? Do you have an age group or a specific time that you can initiate and implement this?" That's a question that has dropped in. Thank you.
Okay. Allow me, therefore, I'm going to answer the question by unpacking some case studies so we can
That's
see the dialogue and the dilemma that this world is facing when they do not understand the definitions and or the context to which spiritual health and our children, for want of a better word, can impact once they have. So I'm going to pull on the work of Professor. Um, her name is Teresa. In Psychology Today, she writes, trauma can potentially sever the belief and connection to God and spiritual faith. I'm going to answer the question. Don't think I'm not going there, but I want to set the ground to answer it. So I answer more than what I believe, because I think there's more to the question. I want to suggest through her writings in Psychology Today that factors such as the age of abuse, whether the abuser lives in the home, if the child has caring or supportive adults in their homes, sometimes life appears to impact on them in ways that the caregiver may not understand at a very, very young age. So age is not a determinant to negate giving spiritual health to a child. To not do it is abusive. Why am I saying that? Survivors have contended with feelings of low self-esteem. We know that problems within our society is such that even it impacts intimacy. People who are married are carrying childhood issues into their marriage, and their marriages are breaking down overnight. Some are pretending to remain married because of the embarrassment that they face. I want to suggest we have people who are living in our societies and neighbors who are living near to us filled with anxiety. These are coming from childhood issues, depression, addictions, and problems managing and expressing feelings in healthy ways. I want to suggest spiritual health can give insights to abusive survivors who may experience psychological losses resulting from the trauma and the drama within their home setting from caregivers and or educating kids in, when I say kids, forgive me, children within schools. I want to suggest, even in America, they removed religion from their curriculum. And I'm going to draw on certain things from England that I've picked up in my research. And as a result of that, the moral fabric was worse than when it was. I want to suggest children have, I think one writer talked about children, we can learn from children so many things about ourselves. You know why? Because we were once children. All adults, if they ever say they have not learned anything from a child, they're lying, because they have learned from their own narrative. And some have become so hardened. So I'm going to share with you some case studies. For those who may relate to this, I'm going to suggest at the end of this call or during this call, please reach out to a counselor. Please reach out. And Mr. Host, I want you to signpost accordingly, because what I'm about to uncover through these three cases is mind-blowing. That's why I'm saying there's no age range to begin when you're talking about spiritual health. In fact, I want to suggest it begins with the adult who needs to be emotionally intelligent to start to teach their child, if you're the mother or you're the father within a home, that you have a child growing within the womb. It needs to begin from there. I shared the story of Fatima. When she was a little girl, she looked forward to going to church because the sermons that were being given provided her with a sense of solace, because she was challenged with all this childhood stuff that she couldn't make sense of. And she believed that God was always with her and loved her. And she could hear her stories through going to church, through the Bible. And one of those stories was the story of Tamar, where she was raped by her own brother in the house of David. And during her most painful times, when she thought about her childhood, prayer offered a safe place to gain a sense of peace and detached her from her worries of her past. What age did that happen? I cannot say. That was just one case. But Fatima believed that God was her light in her darkest moment of life. I share another story. This case study was about another girl, and she shared a critical moment in her life from childhood, where she remembers asking God to intervene because she used to go to church. And for those church-going guys out there, I want to suggest sometimes you're not safe, even in the house of God. And when you have your safeguarding policies, if you're not careful, your safeguarding policies are not safe. So there needs to be safeguarding, which means you've got to start to begin with you, the individual. And if each one of us take that attitude, we could perhaps make a difference in this person's life had we turned the clocks back. But we're here now. And so this person is saying that they have been abused by their stepfather. For those who know, you know. I don't want to, infringe on anyone's situation here, but her stepfather was abusing her, but she wanted to present herself to be an obedient child so that mom is not offended and play happy family, so to speak. So she played the role, and she played happy family. And while she shared her story, she vowed that God would be good to her, and she vowed that she would be good to God, with a hope in her prayer that this abuse would stop. Did it stop? No, it didn't. Despite her prayers went unanswered, and she deeply felt unworthy, and she felt dejected by God, by those who don't understand her. And she remembers thinking not even God loved her. And he was not even willing to protect her. This is a God that people say they worship, the God that created heaven and earth. She felt this God did not protect her, and she was bitter. And at that moment of hope, all vanished. There was no hope. She felt hopeless, completely alone, wounded, and she ended up in a very, very dark place. I know some of our listeners, this may be you in my case study too. What I'm trying to suggest is she stopped praying and she went into a numb state of despair and learned to just take whatever life throws to her. I don't believe this is how one can actually survive and be spiritually healthy. And I don't believe that this particular individual, her well-being had been addressed. So I'm saying even in churches, dad could have been an elder, could have been a pastor, could be a deacon, molesting and abusing their stepchildren. That's not acceptable. I'm suggesting spiritual health and our children, if taught, understood, and role modeled well, would save many families from the heartaches, many adults from the heartache. I share with you another case study. Case study 3. Louisa had a history of excessive childhood neglect and abuse, and it interfered with her ability to develop a sense of trust in anybody, even in her own self. and her world. And so this mistrust and insecurity was built around her resorting to self-infliction, piercings, and scarring her skin with tattoos and all sorts. And others would filter things into her life through her environment negatively, and it would just allow her to just explode, sometimes emotionally, totally out of control. And so she states that her deep spiritual belief over time, when she got to understand who God is for herself, she's saying when she met God, when she had this experience, this vertical connection, her childhood experiences, and the path that she had, she, felt she was now on a road to recovery. And through her spiritual growth, she learned self-forgiveness. Some of us need to forgive ourselves, for we know not what we do to ourselves when we don't forgive ourselves and others. We need to be compassionate and kind to ourselves. And so this particular individual, she felt that her belief in a loving and forgiving God, when she accepted Jesus Christ as a young teenager, helped her to learn the importance of forgiveness, not only for her abuser, but for herself. And so Louisa felt that forgiveness for her abuser was not to forgive him for what he had done, but it was also to let go of her rage, her anger towards people, towards society, towards the educational system. And it was at a point where, there was a frozen moment in time where she felt she could not move forward. But with her faith, having spiritual healthy mindset, or engaging in spiritual health care as a teen, she was able to move forward in life and feeling freer in herself that the ramifications of the abuse can be in the past. So to the listeners out there, I want to suggest, if I have touched anything sensitive that you're struggling with, please do reach out. Our host will definitely signpost you. And I want to suggest that spiritual health, when looking at some other factors, goes beyond into personal values, goals, and belief. And some of these that we may look at, for the whole person, spiritual health, from those 3 case studies, belief and our whole attitude within the situation can be the game changer in some of these, whereby it could lean into us fulfilling our life purpose and add meaning and giving us a sense of direction and a realignment and reframing the negative narratives that we have. If we could just use them as stepping stones. So I'm leaning into the strategies now. So allow me to, Mr. Host, to step into some of those strategies. Is that all right?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, so with regards to some of those strategies, I want to suggest that Maslow theory had supported the thinking of Tony Robbins. For those who may not know him, he is one of our, they call it leadership gurus out there, and he has alluded to the Maslow theory to some extent. He has created what we call the Robbins pyramid of mastery. And in it, he suggests, amongst physical and emotional and relationships and time and all this kind of stuff, at the top of the pinnacle, for those Christians out there, whether you're Christians or not, he's suggesting that spirituality trumps all of those things to bring about true self-actualization and make you more complete as a person. So I want to suggest that spiritual health and well-being is critical in the wholeness of life and the person. I want to suggest that the most important area of your life is to have an extraordinary quality of life. And to recap Robbins, he talks about that physical, body, and emotion, and mastery of those areas in terms of time, career, and your finances. All those masteries are important, but also spiritual health is important to master that. You know, that's for some, you go to theological college. We're not talking about that aspect of mastering the Greek and all the depth of understanding here. I'm talking about mastering that self-actualization of who you truly are, your authentic self. I want to suggest that in each one of us, there's a call to worship something, or to allow something to dominate your life, or to take pleasure in wanting to do that. I want to suggest from Froebel's theory of play. Now, Froebel was, I think he was German. I stand to be corrected. But in 1857, he established the first kindergarten in Germany. And so the term kindergarten came from his work, because he had sadly lost his parents, so he was an orphan. And he had a lot to do with the outdoor. He grew up with the outdoor, and so he relates to the outdoor. And he reminds me of this guy called Jesus Christ, because he also had the outdoor. And according to the Bible, you know, he said, consider the lilies. And he said, consider the ant. So he referred to things in nature and used those as teaching parables. And before we had PowerPoint and so on. So these parables are like, you know, Jesus' scrolls, which he then shares these stories and spiritual, I call spiritual lessons, which helps in spiritual health and well-being, not just the children. He even said, you know, suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not. So to neglect our duty in teaching our children, I want to suggest this education pioneer has helped us to recognize that inherently that children are creative and they have bags of energy that needs to be nurtured and to be guided in a structured way. I want to suggest that from gardening, he also learned that they have this unique approach. And so we too need to create a unique approach to every child. Every child matters. And because every child matters, the importance of play and creativity and hands-on learning for them to explore their world, to touch and to feel, you know, and sometimes children may touch and say, oh, leave that, don't touch that. We may be cramping their style. By that I mean, within context, yes, we got to give them that guidance, but the how we guide them. Do we shout at them? Do we scream at them? Do we take a belt and beat them? Do we put them on a naughty chair to sit down? When we do some of these things, we need to think about the concept of why we're doing this in the light of discipline, when we talk about discipline. And so I want to also play on the words of play. Play is natural. And it's essential. And it is an essential activity for all, even to adults, to have fun and to laugh. The Bible talks about laughter is a medicine. And so children like to laugh. They like to have fun. Who wouldn't like to have fun? I like to have fun. I'm sure you do. And through play, they explore and they understand their world around them. I'm not suggesting that they should be playing with what I should say, in appropriate ways. What I'm trying to suggest here is that with guidance, children can have fun. And with guidance, children can have and be nourished into being spiritually healthy, or having spiritual health in a way that will enhance their development. That's what I'm saying. So leaning into that, I'm also saying that we too could consider how we do it. Because sometimes we may think if I was to give a child a rope and we have people in the room, I'm saying, oh, I'm going to separate the children from the adults. They're going to have a tug of war just for fun. Let's play with me on this. And so we've given the rope, and we've also all the adults to go to the left, all the children to go to the right. And whilst all the adults are to the left and all the children are to the right, you give them that rope. Who do you think will win that tug of war? Who do you really think will win that tug of war? Yes, we're having fun. The children will be perhaps flung up in the air because the adults would have pulled so hard that the kids would, be coming over to their side. What am I trying to say in this analogy? I'm trying to suggest that it can't just be about the adults, because when the adults get older, they're going to need someone to look after them. And as the children are learning, they need someone to look after them. And they're going to rely on safe caregivers and parents to give them that care, that love, and that safe environment. They're going to be looking to someone who can help them understand that they need to play. And play needs to be pretty much the foundation of learning. And that through play, children can express creativity, they can experiment with ideas. You may find that they can also develop and problem solve. These are some of the skills that they can get through play. But I'm also saying through holistic child development, as we head towards some of the strategies, holistic child development recognizes the need for physical, emotional, social, cognitive growth, and that intergenerational crossover for interconnectedness. And so does the spectrum when you look at the older people. When they see a child, they get excitable. When someone has a grandchild, how do they feel? They get excited. This is my genealogy. This is my lineage. I'm a grandparent. Some people might say you're old. As you're growing, some people try to hasten their growth because they want to have beards, and they start to do all sorts of things, rubbing their face to get beard. And some people may start to try and push themselves to get muscles, so they go to the gym. I'm trying to suggest here, whichever way you look at it, human beings are human beings, and we're all someone's child. And because we're all someone's child, there's this connectivity that goes within our DNA. And so when we talk about unity and connectedness as part of learning, as part of that spiritual health and well-being, we are talking about learning integrated into that holistic piece where we can reflect that intergenerational, interconnected nature of life into what we do. And so, of course, we are going to need individuals who can help to shape our children and their outlook, their purpose, their sense of purpose within this world by extending spiritual health to them. That then gives them the freedom and the guidance in early childhood education, which Froebel talks about in his writings, and researchers, you can go out and check it for yourselves. He talks about all of this. And his approach is also being used even in schools today, in kindergarten classes, even now. And so because of his work, I want to suggest that with COVID-19, when it came, the pandemic caused a big challenge. And globally, we're in a crisis. We don't know what to do. And so I want to suggest that spiritual health has been around a long time, but we just haven't appreciated its impact until COVID-19, where we were urged to rethink education, how we communicate worldwide, how we develop holistic approaches. And now governments are crying out for systems thinking, which is a holistic worldview, a way of looking at the actors, the players, the worldview, and the whole catwalk, meaning the customers, the actors, and all these different, pieces. And similarly, if we are looking at health, we have to look at health in a holistic way. We cannot deny that the spiritual, be vertical or horizontal, has impacts on our children. So I've said a lot on that, and I'm going to just zero in on some of the pieces that I believe, in the interest of time, that can be a game changer for us. And allow me to just use my script. I want to suggest that in England, for example, when we looked at early years, there was no recognition of spiritual development as part of our young children. You know, I'm talking about the kindergarten, the beginners in school. For some countries, you may have, you call it reception age, and then you have P1 to P6, or you have class 1 to class 6, or year 1 to year 6. I'm talking about those ages. In England in 2021, a study showed that we do not promote the child's spiritual growth within that sector. And this might have led to a lack of confidence among the early childhood educators in discussing and supporting children's spiritual development in their practice, as well as they may not believe in this spirituality or spiritual health. They may not have a view on who God is. And so contemporary research recognizes the complexity of defining spiritual health. And I want to suggest researchers and scholars alike have also agreed spiritual health has its place. And it encourages the child to have deeper understanding of themselves and empathy of others. And it helps the child to gain appreciation of their wider world, where their behaviors, they're more cognizant of their behaviors and how their behaviors impact on others. So if they're in a classroom, they learn to raise their hands. Sometimes they're not from that world of raising their hands, so they may just, to some educators, become or seem disruptive. I want to suggest we also have children who may have special educational needs. I call them my lovelies. And my lovelies with special educational needs, they're special because they have abilities which some of us, the average person, may not have. And so we need to recognize that people need to we need to differentiate and educate through differentiation to meet needs as well. And by that I mean not addressing spirituality to all based on their where they start in life or where they are in their station of life, deprives that child of a significant learning experience. That's what I'm suggesting today. And I'm suggesting that one of the ways we could do this is by developing an open mind towards spiritual health. By that I mean, we recognize that spirituality is not just a closed book, and a child's spiritual health is not a closed book. It is not one in which a parent or any parent should ignore, because later on in life, it will impact on that child's development as an adult. I'm also suggesting that our vision of spiritual health in supporting a child's spiritual growth as part of a holistic learning and well-being needs to be revisited. We need to revisit the nuances around some of the terminologies that we use, and seeing spiritual health as a mechanism for connectivity, connecting that child's worldview, their family, their community, connecting with nature, connecting with the divinity of what they perceive that to be. And that wider world, I think, is important. because it helps in the civic fabric of peace and order. I want to suggest that when we create inclusive and safe learning environments, we are sensitizing our children to safe learning environments. And we provide sufficient time that we can role model positively feelings that will appreciate the child to speak, so the child can be seen and be heard and understood in the context of their wonderment when they're wandering around, and help to shape or to answer some of the questions within their confusions as they learn through confusion, and some of the puzzles and the puzzlement that may come. They're learning through some of that to understand what faith means to other people who may be of faith if they don't have a faith. They understand others, how they relate to their religion. They'll understand the world around them. And in so doing, they'll also understand the community and the members to which make up their community, and thus the world and the wider world to which they live in. So those moments of creating inclusivity is not just about those children with special educational needs. No, it's wider than that. It's us shifting our mindset, yeah, so that our community that we live in, we can, take pictures of how parents are playing with their children positively to reinforce and to affirm them. So these moments, we are creating those spiritual spaces. I'm calling them spiritual spaces, or safe spaces for our community, so that when in hard times or difficult times, we can draw energy from some of these learning environments. I want to suggest also that it helps the child to be confident, and nature has a way of teaching. Nature teaches and gives meaningful spaces in which children can learn. And so from that, we now have formulating what they call forest schools, where people use nature to teach children those basics that they, learn about ecology, learn about the wind and the rain, and learn how to utilize nature as their teacher. And one of my captions, out there, let nature be your teacher. And it's because of this community that even the small sized garden can act as a classroom. And so you find people are homeschooling children where they feel they're safe for their children's development. What I'm suggesting here is, when we work with families, when we work with communities, we can support that child's spiritual health and work alongside the families and the communities to support and develop a stronger cultural stance towards the values that our children are exposed to, and that child's perspective and their experiences. I want to suggest that educators working closely with families and their communities can invite a shared understanding of that child's spiritual health. I am not sure if my time is up, but I just want to say there are some other things that we could use when we talk about role modeling. There is a product out there called Kids in Discipleship. And if you are one who have never role modeled spiritual health, why not consider a systematic approach of creating those relationships with the home, with the church, with the school, to help implement some of that discipleship in terms of those principles that will build healthy spiritual avenues that will transform lives and transform your community. Another tool out there is what they call the Adventure Club. For those who may not know of it, I'm sure the host could signpost you. There they have a curriculum that covers 4 key areas. And within that curriculum, the curriculum draws on my God, it draws on myself, it draws on my world, and it draws on my there's another one I missed, but it has a range of classes. We take, I think they take kids in from about 2, 3, right up to age 9. And these classes are set with a full curriculum that exposes that child to what we call spiritual health curriculums, as well as a holistic way of life in training up your child in the way that he should go so that they will not depart from it. Some of the classes range from, as I said, there's a variety of classes. Then there's another product out there which can be used, and it's online if you need some of these information. It's called the Pathfinder Club. Now, the Pathfinder Club is for the teens, the early teens, those who may be 9, 10, moving into that range of early teens, right up to age 15. These Pathfinders are a group of young people who focus on community services and building relationship with God. So these tools are not just there for you to just dump onto your child, but parent, please. When it comes onto the Adventure Club, for example, it's a parent and child bonding session where you, the parent, takes the lead and you're just being guided by any other facilitator. In pathfinding, the child then finds their path in what they have learned through that spiritual journey. And they can be encouraged to learn a whole range of activities, including occupations to which they one day may choose. Like myself, I chose to do accounting. I became an accountant because I went through that program. I didn't know it existed. I went through the program and they had these things called honors, and I did the accounting honor. I got excitable about it. And I chose to be an accountant, but then I've left that field and moved on. What I'm trying to suggest is your child can learn lifelong skills and make sense of their world through this program. Another strategy I'm going to suggest is once they are past the age of 15, they're into the age of about 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, they can consider what we call the Teen Leadership Training Program. Again, this is online, and it's designed to challenge and to empower the teen so that they can increase their sense of responsibility of their world and themselves, and where they can be entrusted with planning programs, planning a trip, and risk assessing the trip, and empowering and leading and doing peer leadership and teaching and learning finance and learning how to take risks within a safe environment. Risk as in risk in cooking for a large group. So, you've got to do your food catering certificate, and learning how to cook healthy and be mindful of allergens and all these sort of things, which is mind-blowing, the things you can learn through this leadership training program. It's called the TLT program, and it promotes peer-to-peer learning. My other one that I'd like to share with you is and this is a slant towards a Youth Silver Award. Some people may in England do the Duke of Edinburgh. This is quite similar, which brings together, but it's based in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and it brings this is one of the products they use with their children and their teens. It brings together a core aspect of the physical, the mental, and the spiritual vitality, and it presents a very clear plan that encourages our young people to be well-rounded and develop life skills, strong character qualities, clear thinking, and people helps them to be keen in not just having a spiritual, healthy well-being, but also to role model positively and to be positive models in our world. So these are just some of the strategies that I am sharing in a practical sense that I think can help in the whole aspect of spiritual health, where we are preparing children as young as age 3 to as old as you want to call yourselves, prepare not just for this life, but for life that's beyond us, and some people call it eternity. So these are just some of the things, Mr. Host, that I will be sharing, and I'm sharing. And I just want to finish up on, embedded in all of what I'm saying are some principles which I believe are also key if you're going to have a holistic grip on embedding spiritual health. I want to suggest these are not mine. They belong to each one of us, and it was coined by a gentleman called Mr. Nolan, and it's called the Nolan Principles, which I've adapted as the 7 principles for nurturing spiritual health, and they are selflessness. We have to be selfless as holders of spiritual health. We should act solely in the interest of others. It can't be about ourselves. It can't be about our egos. The second point, integrity. We are holders of spiritual health and must avoid placing ourselves under any obligation to any organization or any people that might try to inappropriately influence our children and or others that are vulnerable, that we should want to take or make decisions in order to gain financially or materially for ourselves or family members. We need to act with integrity if we are going to be spiritual health champions. Objectivity. We need to be holders. I'm going to hold you, anybody who wants to engage on this, to act and take decisions that are fair. Not taking sides because it's your child, not taking sides because it's your husband. Fair to stand and call truth by its name. If a child has done wrong, if a parent has done wrong, if someone has abused someone, be bold enough, courageous enough to do the best and to give the best evidence without discrimination. Accountability, where communities and individuals need to be accountable for the spiritual health of our children and of our nation. I believe that if we are to serve with integrity, we also need to have accountability for the decisions and the actions that we take around educating our child, and it includes spiritual health. That openness then creates the need for us to take actions and decisions and act in a manner that is transparent in every aspect, so that we are without blame. And in terms of risk assessment for any organization or individuals, our reputations are above and not beneath. So honesty is important. Truth, being truthful. When we're talking about spiritual health, we need to be truthful. So the preachers out there, to the churches out, we need to be truthful. To leaders out there in public sector, health sector, whichever sector, once you're working with children, and spiritual health and our children is important. So leadership should exhibit the principles that our very own behaviors would simply be. We treat others with the respect, and we treat others with the with what we expect of others, we also expect of ourselves. So we should actively be robustly promoting and supporting these principles, if we are truly going to be advocates for spiritual health. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for listening. And if there are any questions out there, I am sure you have them in the chat. But there are some quick win strategies whilst you're waiting to tell me to be quiet. You guys can create your world. You can serve. You can, provide and give of yourselves. And so the quick win strategies for me is to ask of you a simple question. So what? You've heard what I've said. What 2 things would you now do? Or what 2 actions would you do so that you can impact lives and transform a life or your community with the understanding you have around spiritual health and our children? Who can you support? And what would that support look like when you are role-playing spiritual health to your community or your child? I leave you with those thoughts and wishing you a pleasant evening. Thank you.
God bless you. God bless you for your message, your in-depth understanding, and the knowledge that you have shared with us. And with this, our viewers and our listeners, the messages that they are sending is that God bless you, and this is an eye-opening. So this reminds me with one group that when you take them, like a choral group, one I know, the Cape Coast in Ghana Youth Choir. As you were talking, their picture came to mind, and you can recall that with this youth and this youth choir, when they were mentioning
Yeah.
about the age group started from as low as you are mentioning. And when they are able to connect and unite, let me give you their surprise and listen to what they have for us this afternoon.
Wow. Beautiful. Wow.
So, as you said,
Wow.
at times we think that it's impossible, but looking at your lectures and how they've been able to combine these kids from 3 years, 4 years, so where you said the person can just assume the age. Look at what
Yes.
they are giving us.
Wow. 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 I certainly believe, as I was listening, that age is a number. I certainly believe
Sure.
age is a number, and
Exactly.
it's a number to which we have to account for, because you only get that age once. And so if you only get age once, I want to suggest that everyone has an opportunity to become a spiritual health advocate.
Sure. So God
And
bless you
allow
for
me,
this lesson. Okay. Talk,
yes,
Peter, talk.
allow me to just wrap up by saying there is a need for spiritual health advocates because there are children suffering right now in churches, in homes. And I want to believe that every child is of value, every human being is of value. And to demean and to devalue anyone or to deny that right cannot be right. And I just want to say, as we develop in our 21st century, it's an important aspect. It meaning spiritual health is definitely an important aspect of a child's holistic well-being, and that linking to autonomy and compassion and passion and resilience and responsibility and all that you've just shown us through the singing. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of hard work. That well-being, that connectiveness that I'm seeing displayed, yeah, spiritual health definitely encourages that child to have a deeper appreciation and understanding of themselves and others, and helps the child to gain an appreciation of their place in their world. Those children that were singing, they certainly found their place in their world. They were singing in a choir. And that lack of recognition of spiritual health may mean that someone may not feel they have the courage or the confidence to sing in a choir or sing at all. And so that lack of guidance in early childhood from educators or caregivers to support a child's spiritual growth through spiritual health in the early years, in the earlier setting, I think is really sad. And it's a stark contrast, I should say, in terms of some who have benefited and are thriving. And I want to suggest that we need to seek more advocates through this broadcast, to provide those spaces, those safe places, those open spaces, those open dialogues amongst the early years, the early childhood educators, to enable those deeper thinking and understanding of the definitions they're using and or their actions in nurturing our children for the future. So that's what I've got to say on this. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for the
So
opportunity.
God bless
Really
you.
appreciate
God bless
it.
you. God bless you. I
Thank
know
you.
you are a very busy person, but you haven't given us 1 hour of your time. Oh, we appreciate that. And as you said, the last word to our viewers and you, our listeners, and ourselves from the presentation, it came up that you can be an advocate. So your last word
Definitely.
for to our viewers, then we end this section. Thank you.
Wow. My last word. I just want to give
Yes,
some
please.
shout outs there to my folks over in Ghana. And
Okay.
I just want to let the folks over in Ghana, especially in the village of Ho, know that there's a group of people called Health for Missions, and they're very keen to make an impact in some of our children's lives around that spiritual piece on spiritual health and well-being. And so they are looking to one day put a children's hospital right there in Ho. And I'm hoping that this dream will come true. So I'm appealing whilst we are here, that if there are any willing souls that want to be part of that, please connect with our host. I'm sure he'll signpost you. And I'm looking forward to the day when we have that hospital built. The cost is £250,000 in British sterling, but I'm sure we have doctors, lawyers, and advocates out there for our children, so that you can
Yes.
help us to build this hospital, and so we can hand this hospital before, if not before 5 years' time. So we're looking for you. We're counting on you. So have a good one. And until then, my shout out to you again, host. Thank you for having me, and have a blessed evening. Okay, then.
We
Bye
also
bye.
thank you and also thanks and shout out to all the sickle cell team, your group. Yes.
Definitely. My
So
guys over in
we really
Uganda.
forget them.
How can I
Yeah.
forget them? Ah, I
Yes.
want to shout out Uncle Abby. I want to shout out BMK. I want to shout out Africana Hotel. Those are our fellow friends that we've met, and we're doing a marvelous work around the work of sickle cell. Hence my passion for children and my passion for sharing this very important topic. As you can appreciate, sickle cell, you don't have a choice. You're born with it. And so another thing that I do, I'm advocating for sickle cell here in the UK and also in Uganda, where we have recently launched a chapter. So thank you very much to my friends out there who are struggling with this. I would call it a dis-ease rather than a disease. We're hoping to reach out to you. So, watch out. We're going to be here. Happy to come back and have a little chat around sickle cell if you would like us to. But until then, have a good evening. All right?
Yeah,
bye
thank
for
you.
now.
So same time next week, Richmond Media will bring health issues to your doorstep. And if you have also developed the interest on how properly to be able to raise the spiritual health of your child or of children, you can contact us and we will know the proper procedures that we can take you through, because you also need to be an advocate. God bless us all. So we meet next week on Richmond Media Health Issues. Bye bye for now.